Good morning. My name's Adam. You probably recognize me from my work here at the announcements that I just did. How was everybody this morning? It's a nice Sunday morning. It's the 11 o'clock crowd, so you guys probably had breakfast already. Can I interest any of you in a Sour Patch Kid? Would anybody like one? You're welcome to them. Just me? Okay. I did hear that they were bad for you. It is clearly not stunted my growth after all. I'm doing quite well. Give me 1 minute. These aren't props. Those are really sour. They're really sour. I don't know where you stand on Sour Patch Kids, but I think when you walk out of here today, you'll have a different perspective of them like I do. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some spiritual souvenirs. What's a souvenir? A souvenir, we go somewhere, we buy something or we get something, we bring it home with us as a little token or a remembrance of our trip, where we've been, show people how cool it was, made an impact on us. Today, I'm going to share with you some spiritual souvenirs that God gave me in my time in Costa Rica with our friends who were here last week, Chuck and Christy Badley. Now, they were here, they updated us on the business aspect of what's going on down in Costa Rica with Love Pure through the generosity of everyone here at Polaris. But while I was there, God really gave me a lot of things. But there are 3 that I'm going to share with you today that just mean so much to me. They've changed my perspective a lot. And so I'm bringing this souvenir back to show you how awesome it was. So let me just get into it. The Sour Patch Kids, right? This is a pretty cool situation that happened. But it started, believe it or not, with a fast. Sour Patch Kids came from my fasting. It shows you how good of a faster I am, right? About a month before our trip, I was a little nervous. I was a little scared. Didn't know what I was getting into. The environment's different. Food insecurity down there. And I like to eat. I eat more meals in my pantry than they eat in a day down there, I feel like. And so I thought I should fast. I wanted to fast to make room for God to say something to me, do something through me. I wanted to fast to get my appetite under control, a little self-control before I get into a situation that I was unfamiliar with. And so I decided I was going to fast. Now, I didn't put parameters on it, okay? I didn't say, like, I'm going to fast for a month or 3 weeks or 10 days. I just said I'm going to eat fruits and vegetables only until God says something. And I want to encourage you with this because I think we do tend to put parameters on when we want to hear from God. We think, oh, it's about us, right? Like if I just, abstain for 3 weeks, God's going to move mountains in my life. He's going to say something to me. Well, praise God. It was about 44 hours into the fast. I did the research. It wasn't my stomach talking. It was God for real. Like, it was really Him. But I heard Him say this. I was standing in my kitchen. It was about dinner time, so, maybe, right? There's this dance I was doing. But He said, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Now, I hadn't read that verse anywhere recently. It just came to me as I was standing there. God really impressed it upon me. He said, I haven't blessed you so that you can pretend to go without, to simply relate to those who are in need. I've blessed you so that you can share with those who have not been blessed like you have. And I was like, are you sure, God? Are you sure? I've got this baked potato ready for dinner again. I know there's chicken in the fridge. Looks pretty good. Are you sure? Is that you? So because I was hungry, I trusted Him. It was God. It was for sure God. So He told me to share. Now again, we were a few weeks out from our trip, and I was just kind of chewing on that a little bit. I didn't really quite understand what He wanted me to share with these people. Maybe it was my time. Maybe it was my energy or excitement. It certainly was not my Spanish, although I was like the group translator. We were in a bad situation with that. But I want to tell you how He showed me what sharing was like. We got down there, and our second day with the kids, I think we have a picture here. I was sitting with 2 children. One was, her name was Kata. She was 11 or 12 years old. And then the other child with me, his name was Alex, and he was about 6 years old. And I think we were just coloring, or we were really just in their element, right? We're there to spend time with them, to engage with them as best we could. And so I'm sitting there coloring, and this little girl named Mia, who's about 6, and I think in the picture there, yeah, she's got the floral shirt on. She came walking through the clubhouse with a bag of Sour Patch Kids like this, right? And she came right up to me and said, "Gordito," which is fat man in Spanish. And she gave me a Sour Patch Kid, that little weasel. She gave me one. Now we were warned ahead of time that, you know, the water down there, they don't always have water, running water like we do. They don't have like hand soap or Purell, and so like there was this different situation down there, right? And so if they offer you something to eat, take it, because that's a really big deal. But the rest is on you. What you do with it is on you. You can roll the dice and eat it if you want, but just know they don't wash their hands like we do. They don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the resources to do that. Just know that there's some extracurriculars that can happen. And so I graciously take this. I mean, look at this thing, right? I graciously take this Sour Patch Kid. You guys can see that, right? I take it from Mia. And I said, "Thank you so much. Gracias. Gracias. Thank you so much." And as she turned to leave, Kata and Alex were like, "We want one." And she said, "No. No." And she carried on. And so I waited for her to pass, and I took this Sour Patch Kid, and I looked at Kata, and I said, "¿Te quieres?" And she goes, "That means, do you want this?" And she said, "Yeah." So I handed this over to Kata, and this is where Jesus did something unbelievable in my life. I gave this little girl who has absolutely nothing and lives in a situation that we can't even fathom or imagine. Doesn't get these at the movie theater like maybe our kids do. I gave her this Sour Patch Kid, and she went like this. She tore it in half, and she gave half of it back to me. It still gets me a little bit. I'm kind of emotional about it. And she gave that back to me, and I said, "Gracias." And I looked over at Alex, and I said, "¿Te quieres? Do you want this?" And he went, "Yeah." And I gave it to him. And what God showed me through Kata was biblical sharing. It doesn't matter how much you've been given, but if you'll just break a little piece of what God has given you off and give it back to Him in gratitude, because of Him giving it to you to begin with, just break off a little bit and hand it back to Him, He can use it to bless somebody else. It was wild, like mind-blowing, right? Like I see all your minds blown everywhere right now because of these silly little Sour Patch Kids. And so I bawled my eyes out because I'm a baby when it comes to spirituality stuff, right? Like I feel like when God's talking to me, like I'm so unworthy of that. Like it's just amazing, right? So I bawled my eyes out. Thank you guys so much for telling me to share, for teaching me to share. But then He thanked me. Then He thanked me. God's like always affirming things with you too. Like if you seek, you will find. If you keep knocking, He will open up. He's going to show you. He wants you to be a part of the journey with Him. And so on our last night with the kids, some of the kids wrote us notes. And I think I have it up there for you to take a look at. That's addressed to Aaron, because they couldn't say Adam. They couldn't say Adam, so they called me Aaron. Okay? And it's from a little girl named Hillary. She was about 12 years old. And the only sincere interaction that I had with Hillary in the whole week was declining her invitation to play rock, paper, scissors for my backpack. She was trying to take my backpack. She wanted to play me. She was ready to go. And I almost got involved in a game I really didn't want to be a part of. I didn't. Fortunately, I survived. So Hillary and I didn't have a whole lot going on, but she wrote me this note that I keep. Does anybody know what that says? It says this: "Thank you for sharing with us." That's it. Thank you for sharing with us. Just, again, bawling my eyes out in my condo as I sat there reflecting on the week that God a month earlier had spoken to me. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Don't pretend to go without. I've blessed you with much. I've given you a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids. You take them and give them to those that don't have. and watch how they break it. They just multiply blessing after blessing after blessing. He told me to share. He taught me to share. And then he thanked me for paying attention to him while I was there. So does anybody want a Sour Patch Kid? A little different, right? They hit a little different when you think of them like that. Thanks to Mia and Kata and Alex for showing me that. I just want to read this. I wrote a lot of stuff, and I told people in the first service that these stories are so personal. I can't just read like my writing to you. I just got to share, but I do want to read this because this is a part of this church's DNA. And it's Isaiah 58, verse 6 through 9. Remember, the story started with me fasting, right? This is God talking to the children of Israel through the prophet Isaiah. It says, "Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood." And then he ties a promise to that statement. He says, "Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, 'Here am I.'" It's so awesome. We don't need to pretend to go without so that we can relate to people who really have it poorly. You know, it's easy to feel kind of guilty for the blessings that we have here in suburban America, but really God has given you a platform, and maybe he's giving you resources, and maybe he's given you a voice, or maybe he's giving you time, he's given you the ability to travel, he's given you the ability to teach or to encourage. I don't know what your spiritual gifting has been, but I challenge you to start thinking about how you might take even just a little bit that he gave you and breaking some off and give it back to him. Because when you do that, he's able to turn to somebody else who doesn't have and hand it to them and bless them in return. So that's the Sour Patch Kid illustration from Costa Rica. Now, another thing that God kind of showed me, because it seems like in Costa Rica, God was really big. Okay, God was loud. He was speaking all sorts of things to me. There were miracles happening. We were seeing people be fed and taught and cared for in ways that they could have never provided on their own. We saw supernatural, divine energy given to the Chuck and Christy. They're angels on earth, I'm telling you, and what they do every single day and how they wake up smiling doing it. But when I got home, I realized that God's doing these kind of miracles everywhere. Everywhere, even here in Brunswick, Ohio, even here at Polaris. But our comfort has created this complacency in our lives where we've really stopped relying on God, and we've gotten to the point where we feel like we can provide for ourselves. God, go help somebody else. I've got this. But what he showed me is that when we're out of our element, we tend to look to him a little bit more. Let me give you an analogy. I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old child. And at home, they don't really need me a whole lot anymore. They're pretty good, right? The only time they ask me for something or invite me to speak with them is when they need something. They need something. I need a ride. I need some money. I need to get somewhere, right? That's when they need me. Other than that, they're pretty well taken care of. Now, once in a while, we'll go to these baseball games, and I'll take them outside of Cleveland. We'll go to like Detroit or Chicago, and we'll go to a ball game. And one of the things I've noticed is my kids, while we're at home here in our neighborhood, they won't hold my hand. But when we get out of town, boy, they reach up and they grab hold of that hand. You know? They're always looking at Dad. If there's something that goes on, they look at Dad first to see how the Dad reacts. You know, because that's when we're out of their element, I'm their provision. I'm their protection. I'm keeping them safe. They're rolling with me. And that's what happened in Costa Rica. I was out of my element. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know what I was eating all the time, right? I had to truly trust and rely on the provision and the protection of God. And so it wasn't that God was doing anything that much greater in Costa Rica than he does here in my own life. It's that I was finally fixated on him. I was looking at him. I was walking with him. I was reaching for his hand because I was out of my element. Some took a step out of their element today. We saw some baptisms. That's scary to get in front of people and say, I love Jesus and he's done something for me, and I want you all to know that I'm going to follow him for the rest of my life. That's scary. That's out of our element. And so this verse I use with my children. And I use it in my life too when I'm feeling kind of shaken about what's coming or where God's calling me to. It's from one of my favorite Bible characters in the whole Scripture. His name is Joshua. And Joshua had some really big shoes to fill following Moses. And so as God's calling him to a new place out of his element, he gives him some messages and some promises that I love to read over my children. And I want to read over you today too, because if you're in a season where you feel like God's calling you to do something and you're nervous, you're in great company. You're in great company. Everybody that's ever been called to do something for God has felt unworthy, undeserving, inadequate. Those are normal feelings when you're following after a big God. But look what God tells Joshua. In Joshua 1:3, he says this, I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Just like I did with all the others who have followed me, that promise is for you. But you got to take a step. Every place that your foot steps, I've already given it to you. I've already called you to it. I've already prepared a place for it. I've prepared you to do the work, but I need you to take a step. You got to step again in faith. You got to keep making strides for Jesus, even though you're unsure. Just as I promised them, it's the same with you. Yeah, I'm still not buying it, God. Joshua didn't either. He still needed encouragement. And so the whole theme of those first 9 verses, God says these things 3 times to Joshua. And in verse 9, it just kind of encapsulates it. He says, have I not commanded you? Didn't I call you? Didn't I send you? Didn't I pull you aside for this particular work? Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. It's scary to take a step out for Jesus. It's scary to go somewhere out of your element. But when you do, you can reach for him because he's right there with you. He'll never leave you and he'll never forsake you. He's already prepared the way. Okay, last one. This one's about mercy, okay, right? Jesus told me in my kitchen, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. So that word mercy was on my brain as we were down there. And the first morning, on Monday morning, I had been volunteered as the breakfast chef. So I had to get up pretty early and cook breakfast for everybody. I was happy to do it. Woke up before the alarm, nerves, excitement. First day we were going down in there, rolling the sleeves up, getting with the kids. I was ready, I think. I was kind of nervous, right? So on that first morning, I was up at 4:30, early. Make some coffee, go out on the balcony. Thought I'd sit with Jesus for a minute. And I took a picture of this sunrise that I want to show you. Now this is from our balcony, and it's looking out over into the mountains, and San Jose is in there, and Los Pinos, where the kids are, is down at the base of the mountain. And I don't know if you've ever watched a sunrise come up over them. It's really slow. Okay? It's actually kind of like looking at your computer and a file loading. Right? Like it's just like real slow and subtle. But as I sat there watching this, I couldn't help but think of this verse in Lamentations where it says that his mercy, his compassion, his love is new every morning. It says this in Lamentations 3:22-23. It says this, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. It's not because of what you're doing or how awesome you are. It's because of God's great love that we are not consumed. His compassions, his mercies, his grace never fail. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. Mercy was loading for the day. There was mercy that was being uploaded for the day. New mercy. Mercy that would overcome that mountain. It overcame the mountain and it flooded the valley. And so if you're here today and you're on the mountaintop of life and you're living great and it's good, give thanks to God because his mercy is new every morning. And if you're in the valley and you see that mountain and you don't know how you're going to get to the top of it or overcome it, good news, mercy overcomes the mountains in our lives, and it floods those low places. So if you're in a valley today, hold tight, because there's new mercy every morning. Great is His faithfulness. Now I'm going to ask the band to come and close us out today with a song that came on the radio on my Spotify right after this moment. And just for those of you that want to go home and listen to it, it's called Morning by Morning by Barrett. And this was a God thing. This was not something I had preloaded. It just came up after this moment about the mercy. So I want you to listen to it. But as we do, I want you to be thinking about where you are in your life with God. You know, there's some of us that have these spiritual souvenirs that we've been given that we can use for His kingdom, and maybe it's time that we start ripping them off and handing them back. Maybe we need to think about what we have that we can share. You know, maybe we can give a little bit back to God of what He's given us. Maybe it's time for us to get out of our comfort zone. You want to see a miracle, you need to step out of the complacency of your comfort zone. You need to spend this time contemplating His goodness in every season of your life. The times where His mercy has overcome the mountains for you, and the times where that mercy has flooded the valleys in the places where you seemed hopeless. And if you still feel this morning like you are in one of those valleys, just hold on, because there's new mercy uploading every single morning. Great is His faithfulness.